What's up, everybody? Welcome to the SQUANCH, Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. My name is Jared. I'm joined here by the Squanchers. We got Ryan.
Wubba wubba, what's up and good morning, everyone.
And we got Alec.
Hey.
All right, and today we're breaking down Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 6, Never Ricking Morty. As always, we're going to go around and see what people thought about this episode. Let's start with Alec. Alec, what'd you think about this episode?
Oh, boy. I'm not quite sure what to think of this episode, so I might revise. I'm being a coward. I might revise my score, but like a C minus? C?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is giving it C-ness?
I think, like, listen, obviously I like meta humor. I'm a fucking millennial, but it's just like meta for the sake of being meta and not really saying or do anything. And also, except for the best joke, which is cum gutters, it's not that funny. There's like a couple moments, but you know.
Okay. All right. Ryan, what'd you think?
I probably like it a little more than you, it sounds like, but I'm kind of there with you. I'm gonna go B minus. Yeah, not too many. Like, I was definitely keeping track of how much I was laughing, and it was medium amount, not nothing. I love the what's it called, the Bechdel test scene.
Bechdel.
Yeah, that scene cracked me up, and several other. They even comment on it in the episode, as lots of episodes do, obviously, where they're like, yeah, this is one of those overly written meta episodes, and that is part of the plot of the thing, and that is kind of a theme that they do, and it is fucking overly written, and I've complained in the first half of this season that there was like a couple moments in some of the episodes where, like, literally I hit a wall in terms of how much I'm being able to follow it in real time. And yeah, there was definitely the moment when it cuts to them, like the space cadets at a training seminar, and they're replaying what the scene we just did as what not to do. That was the moment where I was like, wait a minute, I've completely lost track of the timeline and what's happening in the reality of the show. I think I get it, maybe, and then a couple of minutes later, it's like, okay, this is just the theme of this train they're on, and whatever. So I liked it. I liked it when I thought about it. It didn't like crack me up the whole time, kind of like some Rick and Morty episodes do, but B minus.
Yeah, I felt similarly to Ryan, but that's like 6 minutes into the episode where you're already like, and I'm not saying you in particular, because I was very much in the same boat where I was already like, whoa, what is going on? This is just frankly hard to follow. And when we say that something is stuffy and overwritten, which is their words, I mean, that's not exactly a flattering thing to say about anything. I mean, even if you recognize that something is overwritten, that doesn't take the overwrittenness out of it. It's still just like a slog to get through. And
well, yeah, it's like the best versions of that are when you can tell it's overwritten, but you're getting the feels during it. It's emotionally satisfying throughout, but you're like, oh, I can tell that there's layers upon onion layers of this thing going on. But this is different, where it's like you feel the onion layers first, where you're just like, okay, I know lots of stuff's going on, and I know that it all works, because it's Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, and it's very intricate, and they're not gonna fuck it up. But at the same time, I'm not emotionally following this. You know what it
reminds me of? A South Park episode that I'm not crazy about. Is it Halloween Special, where Randy has his own special strain of weed that's like a stand-in for the show, and it's like, I'm just doing this for myself, and it's crazy and meta and over the top, and nobody likes it. But the joke is that nobody likes it, but it's bad because I don't like it.
Yeah. I watched this episode 3 times because of this very thing that we're talking about. And I do think that there is something to glean from it. And I do think it's kind of an interesting episode. But yeah, I think that first comes confusion, then comes, all right, I'm going to study what this is about. And then comes some satisfaction, but the laughter gets very lost in that. I don't think I, to be honest, really laughed once because I was so frantic and just trying to keep up with what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what would I give it? I would give it a B. I mean, I still think it's a solid episode. It's still Rick and Morty. everything we love Rick and Morty for, this episode does. I mean, usually we appreciate it for its overwrittenness in some sense, but this one I really think does just confound the audience to an unwarranted degree. But anyway, let's get into a recap. So Rick and Morty are stuck in a literal story train where every person on board has an anecdote to tell about Rick, essentially creating an anthology episode in the vein of Interdimensional Cable. When Rick and Morty realize they're aboard, they threaten the anthology's structure, so the continuity cops come in and try to enforce it. When they infiltrate the cops' training headquarters, they find a schematic of the train that suggests they are stuck in Dan Harmon's very own story circle. In order to break the thematic seal, Morty has to tell a story completely unrelated to the show's themes. So on Rick's request, Morty tries his best to tell a story that passes the Bechdel test, which ends in Summer and Beth killing scorpions with their period and getting congratulated by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Right as they're about to stop the train in the engine room, the story lord just comes out and fights them and crashes them through the window over and over, which wakes Rick and Morty up to an alternate reality that puts their scenario in the train in a new context. Storylord traps them and tries to tap them for all their potential in order to bypass the fifth wall and create something that has widest appeal. In order to thwart being burnt out, Rick falls to his knees and prays to Christ, bringing the appeal and marketability of the episode to a halt. Christ appears and Rick traps Storylord inside the reality with him. Turns out everything is happening inside a toy train that Morty bought for Rick. But Jesus and Storylord rebel and derail the train off the track. End of episode.
I like the concept.
So, yeah, cool concept. The first thing I want to ask you guys is, when you were watching it, did you guys get a lot of, and this isn't really related to the episode, but I think it kind of is, and we'll kind of circle back to it, but did you guys get a lot of custom Rick and Morty commercials in between? Yeah, like Wendy's and Pringles. Yes. Yeah. And the thing about these commercials is that they're both cynical in exactly the same way, because in the Pringles ad, Rick is like, oh my God, we're trapped in a Pringles ad, we have to get out. And then in the Wendy's ad, it's, oh my God, we're being chased by Wendy's breakfast to be in an advertisement. You'll never take me alive. And it's that same thing that we're talking about, where the show recognizes that either A, it's stuffy or overwritten, or B, that they're selling out. But just the fact that they recognize it makes it okay. And they've been doing this since the beginning. And I'm surprised that they haven't realized that it's getting old, because there are some other parts.
Consume.
Well, exactly. I think that's the fifth wall, by the way, but we'll get to that later.
I think they are. I think they are becoming a little self-aware. I mean, they've always been self-aware, but in the post-credit scene, there's like a line about buying the train ironically or not ironically, whatever, just buy it, something like that. And I think they're at least like it's an admission of the use of sort of irony and sort of distancing yourself from it as a way to like sell shit. However, storytrain.com does not exist, and we've been lied to.
That sucks.
That does suck, by the way. I thought they told me it was real in the show. I believe them. But I think that, yeah, it's a cynical joke that they're doing. But at the same time, like the way that Rick brings it up and stuff, this whole episode's a big troll is kind of what I'm trying to say right now. Is that I think that they wanted to come out the second half of this season, that they wanted to kind of take the most trolly elements, the most kind of like, this is one big joke episode basically, and they kind of wanted to, you know, that's this, they think it sounds like, or it felt like it probably comes off to them as like really punk rock, but it kind of now, yeah, after we're 4 or 5 seasons into this, feels pretty run of the mill, like I don't know, it's like their punk rockness has now become kind of tired in a way. Do you guys kind of get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Not being very articulate right now.
There was a couple, I can't remember which episode it was in particular, but I remember in this podcast we mentioned that there was a particular joke where Rick said something like, oh, Morty, you working on your Type 5 for the Comedy Store? And we reflected that, you know, how much would that joke really make sense if you weren't if you didn't at least know somebody who was a stand-up comedian or in the LA comedy scene or something like that. And we got quite a number of emails of people saying that I neither live in LA nor know anybody involved in the stand-up scene, and I understood the joke. And I imagine a lot of people were probably in that same boat. But in this one, the whole joke is about the fact that they are writers and they spend a lot of time writing this, and they're writing perfectionists. And again, you don't even really get the joke. It's hard to even say what the joke is. All right, let's just start breaking this down element by element. So let's just start out talking about the story train, the literal literary device that is quite literally metaphorically containing them.
And Snowpiercer.
Yeah, it did have the Snowpiercer vibe to it, in that every cart is kind of this different reality, and then they have to get to the front, to the engine room where the big boss lies. Right. There's one part when so after they cut the ticket stub guy in half, they make a couple of puns about, you're on Fuego with those man cut in half jokes. And then Morty says, see, that's good, clean fun. We don't need to overthink things. And yet the rest of the episode is just them overthinking the hell out of like how to best mirror the structure of the episode physically within the diegesis of the episode. And I don't know, I found it dizzying, to be honest.
For sure. The second that he said that, like, hey, let's not overthink this, my brain immediately went to right when Rick entered this episode and he farts. I'm like, okay, maybe this is going to be a big commentary and they're going to bring it all back to fart jokes and how you shouldn't overthink it. They didn't really go that route, though.
No, they didn't. Well, all right, so let's talk about the Dan Harmon story circle thing. So after they infiltrate the area where the continuity cops are being trained, they go into their files and he whips out this map, and the map is a circle. And Rick says some things like, we're going to have to rig spacesuits that fail around here and have a big price to pay to re-enter the threshold there. So re-entering the threshold, these are technical terms that Dan Harmon's story circle adheres to. And this is the first time that the show has just straight up shown you the map of where they're at. And, then later in the episode, it says, we have to cross the threshold. Rick says, we have to cross the threshold before the ticking clock on your suit reaches 0. Again, drawing attention to a ticking clock trope that makes it so crossing the threshold, again, you're able to increase the drama, increase the tension. So a ticking clock is a device that writers often use to achieve that. Again, all writing jokes. It's so funny how we're often torn between, on the one hand, we think of this show as like these really, really smart people thinking really, really hard about how to create the most thoughtful show possible. And on the other hand, it's just a bunch of guys just telling dick and fart and sci-fi jokes. Which is it? This one definitely seems to be evidence for the former, because the dick and fart jokes are really at a minimal, and all of this is basically just a big old writing joke.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it is worth noting, though, that, the story circle, when they talk about making a sacrifice before you can cross the threshold, which, is in obviously lots of writing, the sacrifice, it plays out exactly like that, in that the sacrifice is that Rick has to put his oxygen tube into Morty to sort of help save him. And then once that happens, they're able to cross a literal threshold, which is a door, which in the story circle, it often isn't that. And that isn't also, I was trying to think of this in terms of, will paying attention to the parts of the story circle help inform some jokes? And I think there is a moment where, because when you cross the threshold, don't you cross it with some gained wisdom? And Rick says, this is right after the whole Bechdel test thing. Rick says, after getting inside, guess who has 2 penises in all the agency?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and so I guess it's like a realization, because the Bechdel test, just to summarize, is it's a test where in the story, will there be two female characters talking to each other and they aren't talking about another man? And lots of things historically fail, or like most media does, because, you know, if there's a woman, she's talking about her boyfriend or something like that. And like, as I think the implicit criticism is that women in these stories don't have agency. So Rick is saying, guess who has two penises? I don't know why he has two penises, but I guess he does.
Well, it's just him and Morty.
Yeah, but he has all the agency. And I think that was another joke that I kind of really liked.
I like when Beth made sure to say, and there are a bunch of female spiders outside. Like,
right, because she's not allowed to talk about anything male. Yeah. So let's talk about when Storylord tries to tap their potential to breach the fifth wall. What do you guys think this means? What is the fifth wall? I mean, I have my theory.
I looked it up. I don't know if this, no, it's not cheating. I just looked it up. So, you know, the fourth wall is obviously talking to the audience and addressing them directly. But the fifth wall is where actors, I've also read there's multiple interpretations, but the one I keep seeing is where actors sort of break the wall between them and their like, not only their personal lives, but specifically their other work. And so an example I saw on the internet was in like some show, Nathan Fillion is paying some homage to his role in Firefly. So that's breaking the fifth wall because it's acknowledging that he is this actor who also plays a character in Firefly. But I also think, and you brought this up earlier, it could apply to, I guess, in animation, like realizing the character as this sort of like commercial IP that has to sell you things.
Yeah. Well, especially because the Storylord has all these mechanisms that are like relatability, wide appeal, marketability, and all these things that he's trying to optimize. So that's what I was like. The fourth wall is the writing conventions, but the fifth wall is the business conventions that inform the writing conventions. That was the way I thought of it, not thinking that the fifth wall was a real term.
Yeah. I didn't know that it was an actual real term. I mean, just when you said it a second ago, I was thinking of like just breaking the fourth wall again when you already have broken the fourth wall. Kind of like that scene in Scream where it's like, it breaks out and it was just a jump, like the person wakes up like it was a dream or a nightmare, and then somebody comes up and kills them, and then they woke up and it was a second dream. That kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Dream within a dream, man.
Yeah, dream within a dream, you know, like, but that's where my brain goes to.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did a short review on our Wisecast channel for Deadpool 2, and I was saying that because Deadpool is so meta and you've come to expect him to be meta in all of his movies, it almost builds this artificial fifth wall, because then you just... the fourth wall being broken is just part of the structure of Deadpool. And so it builds this fifth wall that you then want to be broken. And the fifth wall would be him acknowledging that breaking the fourth wall is something that is inherent to his character. So I guess it's just, it's like Ryan said, it's just a dream within a dream. It's one step above that, one step beyond meta-wise. But yeah. Anyway,
maybe the fifth wall is like the kind of post-irony sort of, you never really are mentioning that you're breaking any wall. You're acting like it's all real, but walls are being broken that are unsaid.
Well, that is an interesting thing to transition to our next point, which is Rick's religious turn. So
no one wants to see that shit.
No one wants to see that shit. Yeah, what do we think about the fact that religiosity tanks their marketability?
I think I thought that joke was kind of funny. Like
I do too. But is it because they're making fun of the fact that their audience is a bunch of atheistic edgelords?
I think it's just that it seems lame and no one would want to see it in reality. But I think that they're wrong, and the shittiest Christian media makes tons of money. They probably would make more money. They'd get embraced by a whole new audience of evangelicals.
Oh my God! If Rick and Morty took like an evangelical turn and started selling like non-colloidal silver on some infomercial, like Jim Baker, that would be amazing. Sorry. It's so you were thinking about the marketability appeal as sort of like their ability to sell stuff, and I don't think that's wrong. But I was thinking more of like the process of just writing stories in general, and so. Right, like when he turns up, I think the I think it's the Broad Appeal or something like that. That's when they get Tammy fighting Summer, Rick fighting Phoenix Person, and Snowball. Like that's what kind of like the whole audience wants. So there is like obviously the pressure of the audience when you're a writer writing a show like this, especially a show that has to make money. And like I did kind of appreciate that element because they're probably conflicted about that, and people just want to see fucking evil Morty. And I mean, I want to see that shit too. I'm not blaming them, but they also have to remain surprising and subvert expectations and all that stuff. And the one true way to subvert expectations is to take a Christian turn. But yeah, I think in terms of writing, though, it would tank their audience. Maybe they'd find a new audience, but I don't know. I feel like the religious media, I think it's a smaller market. Like, don't get me wrong. I think these people are rich beyond a doubt, but like, they're rich because they've dominated a niche market.
Well, I think that's kind of what's meant by Rick saying that if Storylord succeeds, we're going to burn out. Because if Storylord is trying to tap their potential, which basically just means optimizing everything they've ever done for the most marketability possible, which means all the fan favorites, all the Meeseeks, all the Morty Juniors, which I didn't really think that was much of a fan favorite, but it was cool to see him there. And of course, Evil Morty, then it's going to feel like they're doing somebody else's work, whereas they would rather, in order to escape Storylord, they would rather just do a complete religious turn and tank the show rather than it just becoming, a complete fan service for the rest. And then because that would just burn them out.
Yeah.
As writers.
I also wonder, so Rick says a line, we got all that meta canon out of the way, and now we can just be ourselves. I also wonder, in terms of the context of the earlier season, not that they were meta like this, but there was like lots of the episodes were kind of genre takes about time travel, heist movies, etc. And I was kind of, do you think that's maybe not an apology, but saying we're going to move on from that?
Probably for the rest of this season, yeah. I bet it's just normal adventures with Rick and Morty from here on out is what my guess is.
Oh, see, when I think of metacanon, I think of basically them just establishing that we, the creators of the show, the writers, have to expose our inner struggle right now. And so we saw in the first episode of season 4, they called their fans fascists because they wanted evil Morty. They wanted more of this and less of that. And they're just like, all right, we're going to do what we want. Fuck you, you fascists. And then this is kind of another thing in that vein where they're saying that we can't listen to the fans and just give them what they want and make this show the most wide appealing, commercially viable, marketable thing possible, or else we're going to burn out. I think that's the meta canon in the sense that it's not canon about the show, it's canon about the creators.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, what I'm saying,
that's what I took about it.
Is that for the remaining episodes of this half mini season, do you think they're going to continue on that kind of theme? It seemed like they were trying to. They're like, all right, we're going to do this one big episode out of the gate about the show in quotes, and now we're going to kind of not do that. Is what I took out of that line, at least.
What I took from it is just because you guys care about Evil Morty doesn't mean we care about Evil Morty. Just because you guys are theorizing about where he had come from and if he was at one point the original or the Rick's Morty or something like that. I've seen all these fan theories on the internet. Just because you guys are speculating about that doesn't mean we need to address it. And I think that just because you guys love the Meeseeks, we already had them come back in the premiere of this season, doesn't mean we have to do it again. I think it's more just that of them establishing their own autonomy from their audience, even though they have this show that is such a hit because they have such a loyal audience. They still have to kind of get that metacanon out of the way and assert their agency, basically.
They have to acknowledge that they hate their audience before they can get going with the show. I get it. Yeah.
Well, it is kind of interesting. All right. What are you going to say?
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this all kind of goes into the end. is
I think Jared froze. Jared, what'd you say?
Hey, Jared, Jared, you cut out on that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you want to repeat what you just said, though.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I said, so this all takes us to the end where we find out that everything we've seen inside the train is just a piece of merchandise that Morty bought for Rick. And so, again, when we talk about what is this kind of meta canon, I think part of the meta canon is that, look, we have to be a show that's commercial and makes money and is highly marketable, and we have to sustain an audience or maintain that audience, but they want to do it in a way that isn't just doing complete fan service every time, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of shows are also just suffering from this. And I wonder if it's around season 4 or 5 where shows can really just drag on and become shitty or keep getting good. And, some shows continue to innovate. And I think we've asked this before, but what does it mean for Rick and Morty to because if Rick and Morty keeps doing the exact same thing, I think everyone will get tired of it. But I think obviously Dan Harmon, Justin Roiland are very smart, and they have very smart writers. And so they could not a full reinvent, but I think they realize that there's this trap of fan service. And just to go on a very small tangent, this is the exact fucking problem of Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery. And two Star Treks, they're just so busy jerking off oh my God, it's this old character we meet. Isn't this so cool? And I think that's the real danger of having Mr. Meeseeks. It's just a circle jerk of we get it. We've seen Mr. Meeseeks before. But to Star Trek Discovery's credit, they did a thing, not going to spoil anything, where they're basically saying, fuck you, we don't have to pay attention to any of the other shit that happened in Star Trek now ever again. Maybe not ever again.
See, I would go on the fifth wall theme of what you just said, Alec, and that is that I think that if they keep talking about how they don't have to do fan service too much, then that's going to get old in itself.
Yeah, they should just not do fan service.
It's they had several episodes and lines and whatever where they're just oh, we're going to do our own thing. It's all right, we get it, you fucking cartoon, then do it,
do your fucking thing.
Yeah, because at this point in the show, the quote unquote toxic fan base of Rick and Morty is a myth of itself. It's literally I'll meet some people and I'll be oh man, we'll talk about Rick and Morty will come up and they'll literally, so people will say this exact thing. They haven't seen the show. They go, oh yeah, I haven't seen the show, but I just don't know if I want to get into it. The fans seem so lame, and it's all right, I've heard that before, but
yeah.
That is in itself has become a cliche to the show, for it it's like Bernie Sanders or something. It's yeah, I've read a little bit about his policies, but his fans, oh my God, it's dude, do you know anything about, these people? You just heard stuff that you've read, whatever. I think that has become its own thing, and the show is trying its best to deal with that in a weird way, because I think they're a little embarrassed, but at the same time, it's in reality, they don't need entire episodes about that, which to me, that this is kind of what that is in a weird way. But it's they can either just acknowledge it and move on. They just need to get back to the nuts and bolts, which, I'm not saying just give me the hits, give me the fan. Please evolve. But it doesn't have to be about your evolution. But I guess that is a show. They're meta. I don't know. I don't mean to complain about what I love, but I think that they're just going too hard on this.
No, totally. I think that they are embarrassed. I think they are worried that the fandom is going to kind of tank the show, which is why I thought that I wish they actually were a little more. It's the only thing that we get that kind of hedges against the notion that their fans would hate the show if Rick became religious was when Morty says some people are into that stuff. I don't know. It kind of seems like a cheap shot. I almost wish they did a little bit more of that, because I do think that the idea that all Rick and Morty fans are these atheistic edgelords is also something that hurts the show. And so I wish they had almost gone a little bit more into that direction of, kind of asserting the viability of religious thinking. And to an extent, I guess they kind of do at the end, where I don't know what happens when Christ starts making the train bleed everywhere and then it derails off the tracks. Did you guys get anything from that?
He's going to do what he always does. Get the fuck out of here. I don't know what did he say, like, let my eyes be. There was some quote that I couldn't understand, and I
couldn't understand it either.
Something about blood and eyes and being everywhere. No, I think it was just like a wonky thing where Christ has this like does a miracle, but the miracle just derails this toy train. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, no, it's funny, but I didn't know if there was some other, I don't know, asserting the power of Christ or something like that, but that's probably overthinking it. You know, in a recent video, we quoted Dan Harmon about his philosophy of television on our Bojack and the Good Place video, and I feel like it's only appropriate for the most meta of episodes that deconstructs their own storytelling conventions to end cynically on a note just about commercialism, because Dan Harmon's philosophy of television is that it all boils down to commercialism. I'll read the quote again. He said, "TV isn't selling revolution. It's selling a hygienic, relatable substitution for your own filthy, unmarketable humanity." Excuse me. "The trick that television plays is that it swaps out any meaningful and therefore potentially television subverting truth with the basic eternal truth that change is unnecessary." And I think that in an episode that deconstructs their own storytelling, and for a show that's as cynical as it is, it's only appropriate that all of this amounts to just buy merchandise, look straight into the eyes of capitalism and say, "Yes, daddy," or whatever he says.
That I know. I mean, I know it's just pandering, but the quote is, "You just looked straight into the bleeding jaws of capitalism and said, 'Yes, daddy, please.'"
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they have to do, and they are celebrating, or not celebrating that, but I guess just getting all the meta canon out of the way. It's like, look, we're going to do these Pringles and Wendy's commercials. Look, we're going to do our own thing. Just because you care about things doesn't mean we need to deal with it.
Yeah. By the way, Pringles, sponsor this podcast. We'll do some weird shit.
Yeah. We'll do weird shit too. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we go to the mailbag?
I just want to give a shout out to Floaty Bloody Man. He is the real savior. And I think that's it.
Yeah. That was do you guys have a favorite vignette from this? I guess we haven't even talked about the fact that this is their interdimensional cable episode for this season, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. The two vignettes I like, I mean, I like that vignette. It's
Me
very
too.
dark. And also the whole Bechdel test thing was really good.
Yeah, that was my favorite for sure.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I picked the same two. The one at the guy at the arcade and that one.
Yeah, totally. I was just gonna echo Alex's point that my favorite one was the two people whose entire reality is just inside the head of Floaty Bloody Man, and then as soon as they start to have sex, reality itself ceases to exist.
And
he's like
I'm sorry.
Capper, and yeah. Also, sorry.
Oh right.
There's just a small thing. In the room of all of Rick Sanchez's exes, one of them is literally Yoda.
Or it's a Yoda-like creature.
It is of the same race or species that Yoda is. Maybe it's Baby Yoda, grown up.
Maybe a Baby Yoda all grown up. It's possible. It's also for a show that purportedly takes so long to make. I was pretty surprised that they got a line in about the virus at the end.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they wrote these lines over a year ago.
Yeah, it was probably just a very quick pickup.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we are going to enter the mailbag. So send us your questions at squanch@wisecrack.co, or you can send us a voicemail at 213-534-8807. I don't know. Did Joy say we had any voicemails?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
She said
No voicemails. That was Joy. All right, cool. So hit us up, 213-534-8807. We are going to go into the emails. We got a couple. Alec, take it away.
All right. The first email is from Nick, who says, "Hey, Squanchers. I've been looking forward to the second half of the 4th season of Rick and Morty and to the Squanch. This episode made me fall back in love with Rick and Morty. Not that I didn't still love it. I think that getting caught in various webs of internet pasta has affected the way that I watch the show. Not that that's inherently bad. Engaging media critically is good and why I'm here, but I think that's too easy to analyze something to the point where the enjoyment that we experienced in the first place gets lost. Rick and Morty made it clear that they do not give a fuck about canon, narrative circles, or feminist literary devices in regards to the writing, but just want to enjoy the show. I've heard the good news and I'm looking forward to being saved many more times by Jesus Christ with cum gutters on the Rick and Morty story train. Thanks for contributing to the fun. Many smooches, Nick. Maybe this is the real genius of the episode. Thank you, Nick. We just need a different perspective of what I'm getting out of this email. This is an interpretive leap, is that the episode sucks to prove why getting lost in Reddit fan theories about about Rick and Morty sucks.
And I'd say that's the wrong lesson that I hope they don't take away from this episode.
Right, and I would just echo what Ryan was saying earlier. Then we don't really need a crappy episode to do that. Just do it. Just give us something new. Just do what you want.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for the email, Nick. I think we got one more.
Christ.
Yeah. Now from the other perspective, this email from Zonamir. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I tried to look it up, but Google's hard. Hey, wisest of cracks. I like the new episode, but I also have some concerns. While the episode was a fun take on how the creators, Dan probably more than Justin, are dealing with consumerism and the whole social spectacle around the show, especially the numerous Reddit theory threads and those awful YouTubers who have exclusive content news trailers, and it's just 8 minutes video discussing one silly still shot of the show. On the other hand, do they know what their story is? Using the show as a vendetta or therapy is fine, but if every season has an episode or two that's fueled by it, are you on the slow descent into making something that is, with each new season, turning more and more into me against the world?
Yeah, I would prefer more episodes that are not like this, to answer his question, because I kind of see this. I see his concern.
Yeah.
I like the every once in a while where they just completely are like, all right, this is not going to be like any other one. We're going to monologue it. We're going to do, the Pickle Rick one's a good example. That's just a very bizarre structure, but it to me it worked. I know some people don't really like that episode, but kind of like if you're going to show Rick and Morty to a friend, you would never show them this episode.
No.
This is this is deep into when you would, inside baseball Rick and Morty episode that you'd show them at the end once they've kind of already got it. And if every episode is like that, which hopefully it's not going to be, then what are we doing? I don't know what I'm trying to say what I want.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of which, I have a question for you too. People have been telling me that some fans don't really like the first half of this season. Do you guys know why?
Why?
No, I'm asking.
I've seen that in some comments. I don't think that people hate it. I think they're just kind of like meh. In general, I liked it, but I think in context of season 1 or 2 or parts of 3. Yeah, I don't think it stands as highly as some of the other seasons, but I think it's just kind of, I don't know, I think, and I have all the sympathy in the world, but got to keep the show fresh. That's really hard. But while appealing to the core audience, it's just an impossible gamble. And so when this not that the season was stale, that first half of the season was stale, but it certainly, loses some of the newness. It loses some of that kind of magic of the earlier seasons.
I think it's that, but it kind of goes to what I was just talking about in the sense that the beginning of this season, you kind of have to already know a lot about the first 3 seasons to really get some of the jokes. Not that it's totally dependent on it, But those first two seasons are like literally you can show some of those episodes to anybody, and it plays like one of the best Simpsons episodes or something, where it's just like it's like you don't have to have anything before, no backstory. You just get it from the beginning that this is a mad scientist and a kid going on an adventure, and it's fucking hilarious. And end of story. Undeniably hilarious, right? And I feel like in the newer episodes, they're either so dense for their own good, which I like, which Rick and Morty fans like, but it's like it doesn't really play well to it. It's not as accessible to a just random person who you're going to show this episode to, which I think the first 2 episodes do really well, or the first 2 seasons do.
We also had a comment in the live chat, which I think gets to it, is look at how many episodes you guys have discussed. There's not enough philosophical content in season 4. And I think what this person is saying is that, obviously existentials is in all of this, but I think there's like a lot of, with the Szechuan sauce and, the Rick's therapy, there's just a lot of really sort of good kind of deep stuff where a lot of season 4 is just, we're making fun of heist movies, and that's fine. But at the same time, they can't just keep talking about how God is dead and, love is a chemical reaction, because that will also get old. So, yeah, I do get the sense that they're kind of like at this critical juncture, and I'm excited and nervous, and it's kind of showing.
Well, they better figure this shit out. They got like 71 more seasons.
I know. Yeah,
they signed the paperwork. Real. They don't give a shit. They're going to keep writing those checks.
They don't give a shit. Well, I mean, they do give a shit. I mean, I still think that it's their baby, but at the same time, like whether they completely tank or they're making the wankiest of episodes that only appeals to their most hardcore fan base, are sick fucks like me who will watch it 3 times just to know what the fuck is going on. That's that's a very privileged position to have as a TV writer. I mean, that's probably pure creative independence, I would imagine. I don't think anyone is telling them what to do. No. Yeah. In terms of philosophical content, like that's why I think that the Christ turn could have been way more interesting and maybe even like a little bit genuine. I know it's like, oh my God, like, yeah, Rick can't turn religious or whatever, but I don't know. Like, it just opened a new door to like maybe confound the fans a little bit, or introduce like, different modes of thinking that they didn't really take advantage of. And instead they just went back to, like, what is the thing that the story Lord tells Christ at the end is that, your whole origin is just the mix of a Mesopotamian god and a Sumerian god. And it's kind of the same disillusionment that they always get to. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of us discussing episodes, even if we were to discuss this episode in a video or something like that, all we could really talk about is just deconstructing the meta, which is a lot less exciting for us.
Yeah.
Cue wimpy Inception horn.
Yeah, wimpy Inception horn. I got one other question for you guys. I mean, have you guys, just being out and about, I mean, obviously before the virus, have you guys seen all the crazy amounts of Rick and Morty merchandise that's out there?
Oh yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, what's the most surprising, weirdest piece of merchandise you guys have seen?
Surprising weirdest? It's less like surprising what the thing is and more just who I will see doing, it'll just be like some random old person, and I'm like looking at like what kind of the graphic tee it is, and it's like The Godfather, but with all Ricks and Mortys, and it's something like just weird parody stuff, and just like it seems to be everywhere,
Yeah, I've seen like Rick and Morty Monopoly. They have like a version of Rick and Morty for every board game ever. They've got Funko Pop figurines, which they have that for much more obscure stuff, but they have regular figurines. They've got card games. They've got card games that are about specific episodes. Like I think like the Purge episode has its own card game. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's such a hit that I guess somebody's buying these things.
I own Munchkin Rick and Morty, so I'm a consumer of it. It's really good. One of the better Munchkins.
You gotta say yes, Daddy, please to the board games and the card
Daddy,
games.
Please. Best Munchkin ever. Goes along with the game.
A while ago, some of you might recall this. I was really into searching for weird shit on AliExpress. And of course, I typed in Rick and Morty, and there's like Pickle Rick pipes. And I've also, I think when I was in LA, I saw like a really, it was like Morty in sort of like a holy robe kind of thing, but it was just a giant bong, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's not even to say that some of the merchandise that I'm talking about is stuff that Dan and Justin are probably getting paid for. But on top of that, like all those
Bootleg.
T-shirts and stuff, those are all bootleg, being made illegally.
Yeah, exactly.
I was in New Mexico where my parents live over Thanksgiving, and I went to some sort of trade show, and it was all this original glass, which is mostly just tchotchkes. And the only thing that they had that was IP related is somebody made glass figurines of Rick and Morty. Presumably just because they know it's so popular that it would sell. And of course, Dan and Justin aren't making any money from that. But still, it just goes to show that the popularity of this show has been commercialized everywhere.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it, but in terms of just the practicality of bootlegging this show, it's probably way easier than, say, like Cars or something, where it's like you got these CGI, highly rendered CGI cars, whereas just anybody could really draw and ape a Rick and Morty cartoon onto anything because it's shittily drawn,
Yeah.
And not that many colors.
And plus, no matter what you draw, no matter how bizarre it is, whether it's The Godfather or Rick and Morty as apes or whatever, it's all going to make sense within the canon of the show because the whole point of the show is that there are infinite universes and any universe you can imagine exists.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. So send us an email at squanch@wisecrack.co. or send us a voicemail at 213-534-8807 or 21-ELF-HUT-07. Before we go, where can we find you on the internet? Let's start with Alec.
I'm on the Twitter at wisecrackalec. That's it. That's the only place. I think Jared froze, so Ryan, where can people find you?
Jared, thank you for asking. Talking about consumerism, go to my website, ryanhaley.com. Go to my YouTube at Ryan Shorts or Ryan's Game Show. Notification, ring the bell, consume.
Yeah.
Specifically, watch the video that got Ryan kicked off of PlayStation Network.
Yeah, watch my How to Draw Big Bird Sesame Street Tilt Brush tutorial.
Only if you are above the age of 18.
Yeah, only if you're 18 and up. Jared?
Well,
I think
we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Shit.
Bye.